Good morning, everybody. Mikey McNuggets here alongside Jason Lloyd for another episode of the Ultimate Cavaliers Show, aka Cavs and Coffee, coming at you at 8 a.m. on Wednesday morning, coming off a late night, and I mean late night loss to the Los Angeles Clippers. Jason, not the first time all season the Cavs have lost back-to-back games, but it is the first time since late January that Cleveland has lost two in a row. And if you check Twitter, some people think the sky is falling, the Cavs are trash, and in a complete abomination, the first 67 games of the year matter 0% because of what happened in the last two ball games. Jason, let's give some people some clarity here. Last night was not a good game, but it may signal some things that we should keep an eye on down the stretch here.
Yeah, if you want to take the good out of it, watch the first half. If you want to take the bad out of it, watch the second half. The Cavs shot it well in the first half, did not shoot it well in the second half. Zubac killed them really throughout the entire game. They got pushed around a little bit. They got out-rebounded badly. So certainly some things to clean up, and I think we can go through and pull out some things. You were telling me some numbers that you pulled post-All-Star break. There are, I don't know if I would say reasons for concern, but there are things to watch going forward here down the stretch. I also think there's not a ton for them to play for right now. I'm not saying they're losing motivation, but when I covered this team, I saw it every year around this time, around the end of March, where you start to get bored a little bit and you're just waiting for the playoffs to get here. You know, I think the franchise win record is something for them to go for. I think it's something they will go for. I don't know if they'll admit it or not. That probably means something to them. They need to get to 67 to break that. I think 70 is off the table, obviously.
They have to run the table now to reach 70.
They'd have to run the table. That's not going to happen. I don't think 70 is that big of a deal. They may not make it to 67. Who knows? But so I think that there's some things that we can point out to keep an eye on. But certainly I don't think that the season is cratering because of two games.
No, and there's always overreactions to each game. And people, and I'm going to say fans, and this is the beauty of being a fanatic, which is what fan comes from, is that you live and die every single night when your team plays. And it's our job sometimes to ride that roller coaster with you. At other times, our job is to provide some perspective as to why being a fanatic in that sense will drive you crazy. And after seeing, Jason, how Cavs Twitter has reacted to the last two losses, I am now baffled how they ever survived the season where they lost a normal amount of games. Like, they lost 20-something games last year. They were 48 and whatever the number is, 48 and whatever, when they were 51 and 31. Like, they lost 30 games. I don't remember it ever being that bad on a night-to-night basis after each loss, but that is how good Cleveland has played this season, that when something doesn't go right, the immediate reaction is, oh, this is a fluke. Like, no, it's okay. Now, I'm not saying there's nothing to take away from this game. I got two big things I want to point out here. We'll get to that in 1 second. But they're 16-2 in their last 18 games.
Yeah.
Let's take a deep breath. They still have a commanding lead for the 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. Afterwards, following the loss last night, the Cavs made it clear that 70 wins not a priority. The best record in basketball to get home court advantage in the Western Conference, or in the NBA championship against the Western Conference team, not really a priority. And to your point, this is, I don't want to say the dog days of summer in terms of baseball comparatively to basketball, but when you have essentially the 1 seed in your conference wrapped up with 15 games to go, your number one priority is being healthy and being ready for the playoffs. And I'm curious to see how Kenny Atkinson gets this team to flip the switch back into attack mode in those final 6-7 games, Jason, so they can peak at the right time. But this West Coast road trip, I'm not going to be shocked if they lose 2 or 3 of these games. I'm going to be completely honest, just because the hunger factor is not there compared to these other teams like LA, like Phoenix, like Portland, like Sacramento, who are all literally fighting for their playoff lives. The Cavs have the 1 seed in the East wrapped up.
Yeah. I covered so many games in mid to late March where they got blown off the floor and it looked like the sky was falling. And it's funny. Like, I'm looking at the date on the computer, March 19th. I'm like, yeah, this is right around it. It's right around now. It's the last 2 weeks of March. Sometimes even that first week in April, where Cavs fans thought, like, that's it. It's over. They can't win this year. And it's just the inevitability of a long season. And then the playoffs come around and everything's fine again. And that's the one thing. And like in the past, you would always say about the NBA, there's always time. You always have more time because it's so long. the season's so long, series are so long, you always have more time. And this isn't even a situation where you have to say that, because again, 16-2 in their last 18 games, they 12 losses all year long. Like, it's not that big of a deal, guys. But in the grand scheme of even look at last year, it was right around this time they had a really bad loss at Miami. It was in March, and it looked like things were unraveling, and then they pull it together and beat Orlando and then move on to Boston. So take these games for what they are. I like that Kenny's still sort of tinkering with rotations, still tinkering with concepts and schemes. That's where they should be right now on March 19th with the lead that they have. I agree with the players. I don't think the 1 seed overall is that big of a deal. We talked about on the show the other day. Who's to say Oklahoma City even makes it out of the West? The West, you need the 1 seed in the East for obvious reasons, and that's really important. But when it comes to trying to identify the team that's coming out of the West, good luck. It may be OKC. I think they're the best team in the West, but they would have home court over any other team but them. So I'm not sweating that. I don't think it's that big of a deal. Get these guys healthy, keep them healthy. You want to see them shooting a little bit better, and we can get into that. You would like to see them starting to make some shots again. That's gone away over the last month, but I'm not overly panicked about anything going on with this team.
Let's dive into some of the minutia from last night's game. Part of the reason they lost to the Clippers was they got out-rebounded by 20. The final rebounding tally in the game was 49-29. This is an area the Cavs have been much better in of late, but last night against Ivica Zubac and the rest of the Clippers, they were absolutely annihilated. Zubac by himself. Is it Zubac or Zubac?
I think it's Zubac, actually, but
Zubac.
I call them both so that one time you're sure you get it right.
Yeah, we'll call him Big Zoo because he's a very underrated. Like he's a legitimately good center.
He's good. He's
very,
a mauler, man.
Very, very, very good. And he's probably the West Coast version of Jarrett Allen, where in his city he gets appreciated properly. Outside of Cleveland, Jarrett Allen is probably one of the more underrated players in basketball. Big Zoo in LA in that same capacity. Last night he had 20 rebounds by himself. The Cavs have a team throughout the entirety of the game had 29. And a lot of people immediately point to Jarrett Allen. Hey, Jarrett, you got to box out. You got to do your part. Well, how about this? When you look at the box score, Allen had 8 rebounds last night. The other 3 bigs Cleveland played, Mobley, Hunter, and Wade, combined for 7 total. Mobley, in 31 minutes, had 3 rebounds. That is inexcusable and unacceptable from Evan Mobley.
Yeah.
Dean Wade, obviously not that many minutes. He had 3 rebounds. And DeAndre Hunter, for as good as DeAndre played offensively last night, we talked about how he is not much of a rebounder in the numbers. Now, he can be a better rebounder because of his length and athleticism, but that's not something that you expect from DeAndre Hunter. He had 1 rebound last night. So you combine the 3 bigs not named Jarrett Allen, they had a total of 7 rebounds. Jarrett had 8 himself. As a collection of talent, as a group of 5 on the court, the Cavs have to do a better job of rebounding, putting bodies on bodies, keeping Big Zoo off the glass. If he's going to have 8 offensive rebounds, which he did last night, 12 defensive, 8 offensive, it isn't just on one Cavalier to get a body on him and box him out, keep him away from the rim. Send 2. When you have a monster on the glass like that, it's imperative that the guards get involved in the rebounding battle. And when you look at the box score from last night, Donovan had 11 assists. He had 4 rebounds. Darius had 4 rebounds. Those 2 had 9. That's more than you got from the rest of your front court, not named Jarrett Allen. So it's a collection of different ways that you have to help get more physical down low. And it brought me back to this, Jason. The Cavs beat Utah earlier this season, the only time they've played so far. But Walker Kessler had like 19 rebounds in that game. And I made a note as a topic. Could the Cavs' lack of rebounding be a serious issue? And then they won 27 games out of the next 28. And I was like, all right, this is too old. Scrap it off the list. That was Monday. And of course, as soon as I take it off the list, this comes back up and becomes an issue. And there aren't many centers in basketball that are as big, as physical, and as coordinated, which is a big part of rebounding, as Big Zoo. And in the Eastern Conference, Porzingis isn't the rebounder that Zubac is. Cat is in a different way. He's not the same kind of burly rebounder. You don't have a ton of guys like that in the East. But I do think that could be an area you look at this Cavs roster and say, okay, if they're going to get beat in the playoffs, how is it? There's a chance that getting just manhandled on the glass, a la 2 years ago against New York, could be one of the avenues you see Cleveland get beat. And before you respond to that, Jason, you mentioned the shooting numbers a second ago. Last night, Darius 6 of 14 from the floor, 2 of 6 from 3. Donovan was 5 of 18 from the floor, 2 of 9 from 3 since the All-Star break. So in all games since the All-Star break, they've each missed a couple games. Donovan's played 11. I don't know the exact number that Darius has played. He missed a few with that hip injury. Since the All-Star break, Donovan's averaging 24.7 points per game, shooting 40.8% from the floor and 31.2% from 3. Darius, since the All-Star break, 17.8 points per game, 38.2% from the floor, 31.2 from three-point line. The exact same number Donovan is. It could just be a shooting slump. As a team, they're down 3 points from the three-point line since the All-Star break, a little regression to the mean. I'm not overly concerned yet, but the Cavs can't win a championship if Donovan and Darius are both shooting 40% from the floor and 31% from 3.
Yeah, you have to wonder if the groin's bothering Donovan at all still. 2 games back, hasn't played well, hasn't shot well. Maybe, he didn't miss that much time. It's not like he needs 2 weeks to get back in shape. Part of it was, we said all year, is this team really this good of a shooting team, or is this an anomaly? And it went on for so long. I think we finally threw our hands up and said, okay, this is real. And now over the last month, I think we have seen a little bit of the regression that we expected to see maybe in December and January. And it just took a little bit longer to get here. They're still a really good team. They're still going to win a lot of games. They're still really talented players. But, you're not going to make 45% of your three-pointers every night, 48% of your threes every night. And then what do you do when they aren't falling? When you got to find other ways to win, what do you have in your bag? And that's what I think they're going through right now.
And once again, they can snap out of this in a heartbeat. Like, once again, not overly concerned yet, but also it's been 12, 13, 14 games since the All-Star break. And I think that is a fair time period to say, okay, is there something worth looking into here that could be a concern long-term? Darius and Donovan were shooting over their heads prior to the All-Star break. They have regressed to the mean a little bit. I think they're both better than their current shooting splits. Darius was in the 50, 40, 90 club for the majority of the season. He's not a 38% shooter from the floor. And him and Donovan certainly aren't 31% shooters from beyond the arc. So if you're going to go through a shooting slump, which almost every player in the history of the NBA since the league started has gone through many shooting slumps over the course of a season, I'd rather them get it out now than in the playoffs. But you also want to see these guys regaining their form that put them in the conversation for Donovan being a first-team All-NBA guy and Darius being in the conversation for a third-team, maybe even a second-team All-NBA spot if he had continued playing at that level. So once again, no major concern from last night, but 2 areas I think are worth monitoring over the rest of this road trip and down the regular season home stretch here, Jason, is making sure as a collective unit you're rebounding the ball better and then getting your best players back up to their normal averages in terms of shooting percentages.
March 19th is better than April 19th.
Yes. One last thing on Darius, and then we'll move on to our next topic here, Jason. Since that groin injury, when you go to Cleaning the Glass, which is a great job parsing out where shots are coming from, Darius's efficiency pre the injury against New York in the mid-range floater just outside the rim. So not at the rim, but in that mid-range where he's been so effective. He's in I forget the exact numbers, but in the top percentile efficiency.
Yeah.
In those mid-range, in those floaters, in the in-between shots. Elite efficiency. And when he's making those shots, his entire offensive game is unlocked because you have to play him tight on the perimeter, which gives him room to then drive past you. And even though he's not a crazy athlete or 6'5" is going to dunk on your head, when he's making 70% of his mid-range floaters, those mid-range pull-ups, what does the big man then do? Does he come out and help? That leads at the dump-offs for Allen and Mobley, or he takes the shot himself and he's been incredibly efficient at it. Since the injury, those numbers have plummeted, Jason. And when he's not making those shots more than anything else, his offensive game is predicated off being able to get to that spot, make that shot, and read the defense in terms of how they're defending that shot. That is what I think he has to get back to in order to see the peak version of Darius over the next 13, 14 games before the playoffs get started.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to our next topic here, Jason. But first, a quick word from FanDuel. You guys know that March Madness started last night, and FanDuel's giving you a chance to get in on the action like never before throughout the entirety of the NCAA tournament. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when their first $5 bet wins. That is $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories. You can even pick who's going to cut down the nets when it's all said and done. Visit FanDuel.com/UCSS and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. Make sure you use FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, Jason, this may not be the perfect day to do this topic because Evan Mobley came back yesterday and the Cavs still lost. But we decided to do this prior to the game, and I think you can make a strong case for both sides of this one, Jason. And you can go first. But who is the most important player on the Cavs this season? Not who's been the best, not who is the best, not who will be the best at some point, but who is their most important, irreplaceable player right now? Is it Evan? Is it Donovan Mitchell? Or is it someone else?
Well, it's definitely one of those two. And I kind of went back and forth. We've had the conversation for years, and I think you and I have been in lockstep on this. They are not a viable championship contender until Evan is the best player on the team. I've said that since this thing started to turn. And here they are, they're viable championship contenders for sure. And I think it's worth asking, is Evan the best player on the team? I don't know that he has surpassed Donovan yet, but he's closing the gap very, very quickly. And I think you can make a case for their 1 and 1A right now. And there is no formula for how a passing of the torch happens on, I think both players come to the realization of it. And I think that there is a concerted effort on the floor to prioritize or make one the focal point of the other. The reason why I think Evan, is the most important player, I don't know. I think it's two different conversations, best and most important. I know it sounds silly because your best player should be your most important player. Honestly, I'm not sure who the Cavs' best player is right now. If is it Donovan or is it Evan? But I know that there's one guy who can win you a game at both ends of the floor, and it's not Donovan Mitchell. And for that reason, I do tend to believe that you can make the case that Evan is the most important player because when his shot isn't falling, and again, last night's not a great example of this because he was not as forceful on the boards as he needs to be. But Evan can win you a game defensively, and he can win you a game with his athleticism and just some of the plays he can make. I texted you. I was watching the first half, the one play about late in the first quarter. The Clippers, I can't remember who it was, threw a lob to the rim, and Evan just throws a wing up there and snatches it out of the air, drives the length of the floor, and banks it off the glass at the other end. There are less than 10 players in the league who can do what he did on that play.
Those years he spent with Steve Kerr really benefited him.
Mobley can run the show a little bit, and part of that conversation was to unlock Mobley and have him be kind of like
those years.
And guys who could do that in the league. And Donovan Mitchell's not doing that. Jarrett Allen's not doing that. Jarrett can win you a game at the defensive end. He can help win you a game at the defensive game end. Jarrett's not going to win you a game at the offensive end. Donovan certainly can shoot you to wins, but Donovan's not going to be the defensive player at the other end of the floor. He's not known. If you're counting on Donovan Mitchell to make defensive stops to win you a game, you're probably going to be disappointed. It's just the reality of where they're at. And same with Darius, really. So for that reason, because he's a triple threat, because he can usually hold his own on the glass, he's so incredible defensively. He can guard 1 through 5. He can make plays like you just saw, going the length of the floor and bank it off the glass. The shooting is coming around. The offense is coming around. He can create for himself now that he could never do before. Yeah, I do think that Evan's the best or the most important. I don't know if he's the best. And maybe I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth. I don't know if he's the best yet, but he's close if he's not. But I do think he's the most important.
He's definitely not the best yet, in my opinion. I think he could surpass Donovan here next season. I think I need to see it for more than 1 year before I anoint him over a guy who's about to be a first-team All-NBA performer. And Jason, while I agree with you, I'll tell you why, but then I'm going to make the case for Donovan because I do think this is a very tight conversation. But just for context, this season without Evan Mobley, in the 8 games he's missed, the Cavs are 5-3. That's a 62.5% win percentage. Overall on the season, they are now 56-12, which is an 83% win percentage. So with Mobley compared to without Mobley, it's about a 20-point differentiation in win percentage. Since 2022, so in this iteration of the Cavs, since they acquired Donovan Mitchell, they are 27-16 when Evan Mobley does not play. Once again, a 62.5% win percentage. Overall, they're 155-77, which is a 72% win percentage, 10 points, higher than the overall record without Evan Mobley. When you look at the Cavs roster, I think the reason Mobley is even more important than Donovan is when Evan isn't in the lineup, your backup big is Tristan Thompson.
Yeah.
And when Donovan's not in the lineup, That means Ty Jerome gets those minutes. And when Ty Jerome has been asked to play those minutes, he has performed at arguably an all-star level. He essentially averages 21, 6, and 6 in games where he's asked to play over 25 minutes per game, a la games where Darius or Donovan are not in the lineup and not suited up. So because of the fact that there is a suitable replacement if Donovan doesn't play, and there is, with all due respect to Tristan, a gigantic ocean-sized gap between when Evan doesn't play and who they have to rely on elsewhere, I think Mobley gets the edge and who's more important. But let me make the case for Donovan, because I don't want to take anything away from Donovan. He's having an incredible season. We have seen Donovan last season against Orlando single-handedly carry an offense in a playoff game.
Yep.
And come playoffs, regular season be damned, the best players in the playoffs are the guys who can get a bucket when needed. When the defense is locked in, not just for the final 5 minutes of a game, but for 42 of the 48 minutes. And defenses are scouted better. And they are more focused and hyper-focused on taking away what you want to do best. And they know what parts of the floor you want to attack. And do you have a counter to their counter? And we haven't seen Evan yet be in a situation to where he's one of the 3 guys that are the top of the scouting report. The other team's going to know every single one of his tendencies. Does he have an answer to that? We know Donovan does. We saw it last season against Orlando in the playoffs. We saw it early against the Celtics before he got injured and missed the final 2 games of that series. And sure, Mobley played awesome in that series. I'm not taking anything away from it. But they don't get to Boston if it's not for Donovan's offensive heroics against Orlando, which single-handedly carried an offense that saw Evan disappear at times, that saw Darius disappear. Jarrett Allen was out. It was Donovan and a cast of nobodies in that series in terms of how they were playing, and they still reached the Eastern Conference semifinals. So in terms of importance, the number one most important thing you need to win a playoff series is a bucket getter and a tough shot maker. And we have yet to see from anyone else on the Cavs roster not named Donovan that they can come through time in and time again in a playoff scenario against a good team, deliver at that level. And until someone else shows me they can, I don't know if I could put anyone in a more important role than I can number 45. Even though I just agreed with you, Jason, the answer is Evan Mobley because the backup is Tristan Thompson.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I was just sitting there thinking as you were talking, you need a bucket, game on the line. Where are you going? Who are you giving it to? And it's probably 45. You can make a case for Darius given the clutch numbers.
I think real quick, sorry to cut you off, Jason.
No, go.
Against Orlando, I thought part of their downfall down the stretch was Donovan was a little too assertive. And I actually thought they should have deferred, and the Cavs become more guardable in those situations when anyone, not just Donovan, it was Donovan against Orlando, but when any of those guys becomes too heliocentric offensively down the stretch, they're at their best when you don't know which way they're coming from and who's going to be the focal point of the offense. And I think that's what's made them so dangerous in the clutch this season.
Well, they lost the game. Correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't they lose the game? Donovan scored 50 against Orlando and they lost.
No, that was game 5, I thought. I'll double check.
I thought they lost the game that he scored 50. I'm almost positive.
Oh, that was game 6. You're right. That was game 6. Yeah.
So, I mean, it just goes to show a lot of times. I remember having this conversation when it happened. And
it was game 6. You're right.
Yeah. I remember people were upset with Donovan that he wasn't passing more. I'm like, guys, there's a reason he's not passing more. He doesn't trust anybody else to make the shots. Like when you get in situations like that in a playoff game, when a dude's going for 50 plus in a playoff game, a lot of times because he didn't trust anybody else to make a shot. So he knows he's got to do it all himself. And then you wind up in situations like that where you score 50 and lose because the offense is so one-dimensional. And that's going back to what I originally asked. Late game situation, you need a bucket. Where are you going? I think it is Donovan. But the fact that if you're another team, you do have to have in the back of your head. It's not a foregone conclusion. It's going to Donovan. There are options. I think right now, as we sit here right now, I think they have options. They could go to Evan. They could go to Darius for that last shot. More than likely, it's going to be Donovan. But just the fact that defenses can't load up on him now, and just automatically assume that's where it's going. I think one of the beauties of this team and how unselfish they are. If a team sends 2 or 3 at Donovan, he's going to have no trouble making the open pass to one of those other guys for the shot.
I think Darius, based off the numbers, should be the NBA's clutch player of the season this year.
Yeah.
I'll die on that
ridiculous.
hill. And I don't think he's the Cavs' best option late in the game. So take that however you want to take it. It's a great problem for Kenny Atkinson to have.
Yeah.
And I'll die on the hill that when they become predictable in the clutch, that's when they're stoppable. When they are unpredictable and they mix up who's the focal point of the offensive possession, that is when they are at their best. Yeah. And it was a perfect example against Orlando where they actually got some good looks. They just missed those shots. It was Donovan, and then Donovan again. They ran one play for Max Strus, and guess what happened when Strus got that shot, Jason? Great look. He cashed it. I think the Cavs are at their best in those clutch moments when it's a 3-headed, 4-headed attack as opposed to one guy just trying to take over.
You know, I'm going to hijack this for 1 second because I just thought of something, and I actually thought of this the other day, and I wanted to ask, and I never did. I want to know who their best inbounder is. Do you know who it is? I don't know. Who's their best inbounder on a late game possession?
They've put Mobley there a few times, and I don't think it's Mobley.
I think it might be Hunter, but just because of his size and length, and he's not going to be
maybe Dean.
Maybe, but I just you could talk to this more than me because you played. I just know from covering it and from talking to guys, it is such an important job as the trigger man on those, and that's why Mike Miller, for as terrible as he was the year he was in Cleveland, and I died a gruesome, bloody death of insisting Mike Miller was going to win them a playoff game. But Mike was so good as an inbounder that he was their go-to guy. And it's such a key thing that nobody ever thinks about and nobody pays any attention to. I'm just curious. I don't know. I don't know the answer to it, but I'm wondering who their best inbounder is on those late game situations in the playoffs.
Well, it's a great question to ask Kenny. He'll probably give us an honest to God answer because if you ask him basketball stuff, he can't lie. You could actually see he knows he shouldn't be doing it, and you could see BJ gets twiddle fingers Kenny, you don't have to answer, but he just loves talking ball, so he probably honestly would give us a good answer pregame. So maybe we ask that when they're home next Thursday.
We could pay just close enough attention. But even then, in the playoffs, it'd probably be different than what they do now.
But they've gone to Mobley a few. I remember. I forget what game it was, but they had it was against Boston when they had the crazy fourth quarter comeback, and Mobley inbounded it and he threw a jump ball to Niang, and Niang used his larger backside to box out somebody and catch it. And you're sitting next to me, I'm like, what are they like? That was the play, and it was because no one else was open. And I'm like, why is Mo? Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do.
I think it was Boston. Maybe it wasn't Boston, but I know Niang caught it, and I was like, oh my God, why is that? And we asked about it afterwards, and Kenny said, yeah, we messed up the inbound play, but Niang, good spatial awareness, big ass, boxed out his guy and caught it.
Yeah. And
he's like, we like Evan in that spot, but I don't know if I think Evan's too fluid of an athlete and too big. I kind of like him in the receiving end.
Absolutely.
More than I do the passer role there.
And that's why Mike Miller was such a good inbounder because he wasn't really much of a threat at that point. You weren't necessarily going to, Mike was a great 3-point shooter throughout his career, but by that stage, he had lost it. But and that's why I look at Hunter as a smart veteran who's long, who can see over guys, because a lot of times you try and put big guys on the inbounder.
Yeah.
But Hunter, I don't know, is going to be one of your top options on a catch and shoot or anything like that. So I kind of like DeAndre, but I'd be curious to hear what Kenny has to say.
It's a great question. We should ask him. And I don't know the answer, but we can certainly ask him coming up here when they are back home next Thursday here against the San Antonio Spurs, -1 being Fox. So buy your tickets now. That will be a very cheap ticket with no star power coming in from San Antonio. Guys, we got one more topic to get to here today. As a reminder, you can watch the Ultimate 216 show later today. G. Bush is doing an Ultimate Brown show later today. We got a full 2 hours of UCSS, and we have Todd McShay coming on at 12:30 today. He recently, in his most recent podcast on Monday, put out a entire spiel on why he believes Shedeur Sanders to the Cleveland Browns makes a ton of sense now at number 2. He's going to explain more in detail on that today on UCSS. That's coming up at 12:30, so tune in for that. Jason, the March Madness bracket is officially unveiled. UNC beat San Diego State last night in the first play-in. So we figured we have a little fun with this today. We're going to use Akron, the hometown kids, the 13-seed Akron Zips, won the MAC in dramatic fashion. They're heading out to Seattle to play Arizona in the first round. And they're a good team. Make no mistake, they're a good team, Jason. But we decided which of the Cavs players, if you were to put on Akron right now, so currently how they're playing, right now, drop them onto that team, could Akron win the national championship, Jason? And we're going to start from the bottom up. No, we're going to start from the top down. Excuse me. From Donovan on down to see how many players in the Cavs we think we could drop on the Akron Zips roster and see if they can win a national championship. So,
spoiler alert, I don't think it's that many.
I don't either. All
right.
I'm curious to see where you draw the line. And there's one guy that I'm torn on, and I hope you can talk some sense into me because maybe I'm too high on it than not. But let's start with Donovan. If you put Donovan on Akron right now, could the Zips win a national championship?
Yes, 100%.
I agree. Darius Garland, if he was on Akron, could Akron win the championship?
That might be my list. Honestly, that might be my list. I mean, Darius, he's a point guard. I mean, for the sake of the exercise, he could get him to the Final Four. He's getting him to the Final Four. I guess. I mean, I'll say yeah.
If you think he can make the Final Four, then you think he can win a championship.
All right,
so that's a yes then.
All right, that's fair.
I also think Darius is a yes. I've seen NBA guys grasping at air trying to stay in front of Darius Garland. I've seen Darius make 7 dozen threes from deep NBA range. I've seen how poorly some of these college basketball teams can shoot, Jason. Yeah. I think point guard play more than anything else the most important position in March Madness. Darius would be the best point guard in college basketball, bar none, by a lot.
Oh, for sure.
If you have the best point guard in college basketball, you have a chance to win any game. So I do think Darius would be a good enough player to lead Akron.
I'm going to change this then because you're right. If you can make the Final Four, you can win a national championship. I'm basing this on who can get them to the Final Four.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Same end goal.
All right.
Evan Mobley,
in my head, it makes it different. I don't know why, but that's just the way my brain operates. So I'll agree with you. Darius gets him to the Final Four.
If you put Evan Mobley on Akron, could they come out of the region?
They're a Final Four team. Yeah,
I agree. I feel like Evan defensively in college right now would be Anthony Davis-esque, but he's much better offensively now than Anthony Davis was back at Kentucky. I think him alone could be enough to just completely disintegrate an opposing team's offense. Even the better offenses in college basketball have no answer for Evan Mobley.
And what's wild is in the old days, he would be a rookie in the NBA this year. Last year would have been his senior year. That's wild.
All right, so we're 3 for 3. Here's where I think it's fun. Does Jarrett Allen on Akron make it a Final Four?
No.
I agree.
No.
I agree. I think they could win a couple of games, but I'm not sure if Jarrett – and remember, it's current status, so he's a hurt right hand. I'm not sure if a 1.5-handed Jarrett Allen is good enough to counteract the lack of talent that Akron has against some of the other top teams in that region.
I mean, he'd have 25 rebounds a game or more. Shit, he can get 25 in the NBA. He might have 30. But I don't know that – I don't know you're going to run your offense through Jarrett Allen. You know, I don't – they get to the Sweet 16. They for sure get to the Sweet 16.
Yeah, I think they're beating Arizona. They're pulling an upset. They're a Cinderella, a nice run. But
yeah,
if you have to rely on Jarrett Allen to run offense through Jarrett Allen to score 25, 30, even against college kids, he can do it. But can he do it 4 or 5 games in a row? That's where I'm not sure. That's why I'm a little hesitant with Jarrett Allen. Let's go to DeAndre Hunter, Jason. If you put DeAndre Hunter, a national champion in his own right at Virginia, onto the Zips, is that 3-and-D size, length, versatility, and scoring ability enough to lead Akron to a Final Four?
No, I think for me, I think we've hit the end of the list.
Okay.
You disagree? You think Hunter could?
I can be talked into Hunter. I think at 6'8", he's an ISO scorer, so you can basically play 1-on-5 on that end and just have 4 guys back to play defense. If he's hot, now once again, this comes down to can they do it 5 games in a row, basically. Can DeAndre lead a team? I could be talked into this one either way. I'm not 100% confident, but I've seen DeAndre go hot enough that I think on those days they can beat anybody.
And I mean, he could play like Jarrett can't play as many minutes probably as DeAndre. If it's a 40-minute game, DeAndre is going to have to play 38 minutes.
Yeah.
He's playing
40. No, he ain't coming out.
You know what? You might. Yeah, you might be right. Because they got so many TV timeouts in college that you can get your rest then. You might be right. All these guys may have to play the entire game.
Yeah. I'm torn on the fence with DeAndre. I can talk myself into it if we want. You know what? I'll say yes. I think DeAndre on Akron, just because he's like, who's guarding DeAndre Hunter?
Yeah, I'll go back to my Final Four. I guess maybe he could get him to a final. Yeah, he could get him to a Final Four.
All right, Ty Jerome.
Especially in today's college.
Yeah, Ty Jerome.
No, I can't get there.
I think Ty Jerome. Do you remember Marshall Henderson on Ole Miss a couple of years ago?
Yeah,
he went crazy.
Yeah.
Well, Ty Jerome won a national championship. So shout out to Ty. And he talked about, he was on the Rosillo podcast a couple of weeks ago, and he talked about how he was on the team that lost to the 16 seed. He was on that 1 seed. Virginia lost and then came back the next year, won a championship.
Yep.
And he talked about how difficult it was to move on from that, and then the gratification that came with then winning the next year. But he said the tournament is such a hard thing to overcome because of the schedule, the uncertainty of who you're going to play. You don't have time to scout. By the end of it, your body's just broken down. Like he goes, the Final Four, if you want the best caliber basketball, give us another week. Like we're playing 8 games or 4 games in 8 days, basically, at the highest of high levels with no off time. It's absurd. I think Ty can win a game or two. We've seen Ty win a game or two for Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
Can he do that 4 or 5 games in a row? That may I want to say yes, but I know that's probably the wrong answer.
Yeah, no, I think it's a no. And they'll never extend March Madness because it bleeds into the Masters. CBS needs that following week for the Masters, and they're never going to move the Masters. So the schedule is what it is for March Madness. I hear what he's saying, and he's not wrong.
Yeah,
I remember covering Ohio State's run to the national title game against Florida in 2006. And how exhausted those guys were, and how, because I mean, in college, you're not used to playing that type of, it's like an NBA type schedule.
Yeah.
And guys aren't, with the travel involved and everything else, college basketball teams aren't used to playing that rigorous schedule. And then all of a sudden, from really your conference tournament on, it's all basketball. And by the end, man, these guys are beat up and exhausted. So I hear what he's saying, and he's not wrong, but it'll never happen. And
real quick, I'm just going to name the rest of the guys, Jason. That's where I draw the line on my list, but Wade, Tyson, Okoro, Merrill, Javante, Porter Jr., Strus. I'm at a no for all of them. I don't think 4 games.
Yeah,
it's going to happen.
The more I think about with DeAndre, I agree with you. I think DeAndre gets him to the Final Four. You can see it now. He's College Player of the Year. He's averaging 33 points a game, and he's unstoppable. And yeah, I say DeAndre gets him to the Final Four. But I don't think Jarrett does. Evan, DeAndre, Donovan,
and Darius.
I'm grudging on Darius, but Darius.
And just because every time I've said Ty Jerome can't do something, he's proven me wrong and done it. I'm going to add Ty Jerome and make it 5 for me. But I certainly know that that's probably the wrong opinion. Jason, that's going to wrap it up here for another edition of Cavs and Coffee. The Cavs back in action tonight against the Phoenix Suns, the second night of a back-to-back. Do you anticipate a better performance from Cleveland coming off the loss to Los Angeles last night?
Hard to say. Second night of a back-to-back. We'll see if everybody plays or if they rest anybody. But yeah, I think they were so poor in the second half that they'll come back with a better effort tonight. Real quick, I meant to say this earlier. I filled out my bracket.
Who you got?
I did all coin tosses. I flipped a coin for every game. So I have my Final Four is Creighton, Liberty, Grand Canyon, and Purdue.
Love it. Well, hey, we have the UCSS bracket challenge on ESPN, Jason. So make sure you submit that.
I will load this up. It is
free. It costs $0.00. The link is on our community tab. The password is UCSS, so you can get in. But it is free. It's for bragging rights. Submit your bracket.
I don't think I'm going to win with Purdue against Grand Canyon in the national championship game, and Purdue is a national champion. But hey, you never know.
You never know. That's the beauty of March Madness. All right, Jason, appreciate you, and we will see you guys in 2 hours and 20 minutes on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, talking Cavs, talking Browns, new stadium, Deshaun Watson's comeback, and most importantly, Todd McShay joins the show at 12:30 to talk about why he believes Shedeur Sanders is the perfect fit for the Cleveland Browns. For Jason, I'm McNuggets. Peace.